Hello and welcome to another episode of Graham Hughes' PUBCAST. And this episode, I'm here joined with Professor Tom Brooks, Dean of Law of Durham University. And we're actually in the Palatine Cafe today. We're not in a pub because it's a bit early. It's only 9 o'clock.
Yeah, well, my schedule doesn't allow it.
So today we're going to be talking about freedom of movement, which is something that is going to be taken away from us on the 1st of November.
Trick or treat.
Trick or treat. It's a trick. It's all a trick. No
it's
treats
definitely
here.
not a treat. No.
So let's go through this. First of all, let's talk about the impact of that on this institution, on this university here.
Yeah.
What's going to happen?
Or any institution, any university, really. It will be, I think, potentially, awful is the non-legal term. Awful for lots of reasons. So there's some obvious areas of concern, and there's maybe some less obvious. So one of the obvious things that will be impacted, obviously, will be the students, right? So students who have free movement. Of course, we have students from all over the world here. I'm not the only American here at the university.
You're American?
I'm American. Yeah, I know you're surprised. The accent, it sounds like I'm from Teesside.
Sounds so George.
But yeah, I'm working on it. And my Scouse accent as well. But there's other North Americans as well, and we're from outside the European Union. We can study and so on and so forth. But there is a restrictive visa regime for non-EU students. Visa, no. So foreign students from outside the European Union are treated differently than students who are from within. We have to pay basically, what do they call it? The health surcharge. So £150, I think, a year. If you're doing a 3-year degree, you need to pay all 3 years up front.
Right.
You don't do it year by year, you do it all up once. And amongst other things. And so it's more restrictive, it's more costly, and so on to be outside the European Union. And so to kind of cancel it right away from the 31st of October, what about those university students, not just at Durham, but at many other places, that would have started their degrees effectively around the 1st of October, beginning of the month? They would have had, I guess, the right to be there in October, but what would happen from the 1st of November? I would expect the government to say that students exercising their freedom of movement to study in the UK without the more restrictive, more expensive student visas for the Americans, the Chinese, the Nigerians, and so on, that they will be able to go as normal. But I haven't heard that from Priti Patel, the Home Secretary. Wouldn't that
require an act of Parliament?
I would have thought so.
And there isn't one scheduled.
There isn't one scheduled.
So, because I was going to say, I thought that the freedom of movement would be over, so the student would be allowed to continue their course of study for 3-4 years, maybe longer. And then when they finish it, they're going to be in the same boat as an American, where you really have to go home as soon as you finish your degree.
Well, arguably, they'd be able to complete, but the issue would be they'd have to get on a plane back to France, Germany, Greece, wherever they're from in the EU. And if they're to be treated like non-EU students from the 1st of November, they would have to apply for a visa after paying for the health surcharge for the remaining bit of their degrees, get that, and then they can return. That should probably take about, normally for non-EU people it can take a good month. But since it'll be potentially quite a few people, and it will be new, and the Home Office doesn't do new very well in volume, it might be very disruptive. So, by which I mean more than a month.
Let me get this straight. So if we crash out without a transition period with the EU, which is the plan that the government's got at the moment to drive the economy off a cliff.
And if freedom of movement does end,
right. So if any foreign national who has a non-UK passport from any of the EU 27 countries will instantly have to apply to keep working in the country, because is settled status the same as being able to work?
Well, there's also an issue. So then there's the people who. So I was focusing on just mentioning the students. Now let's go to the people who work here or work elsewhere. If freedom of movement ends, strictly speaking, now again, I would expect some government statement about things that we haven't seen, but if it really does end, someone's ability to work here is by exercising freedom of movement. And that means things like if they are not self-employed, they can come to work at a place like Durham University, and maybe not required to have comprehensive health insurance for that, but they are self-employed and coming from France, Germany, Greece, and they would be required to be having something like that anyway to exercise freedom of movement. There's been an issue around people trying to get settled status who have not met the residency requirements, not realizing they had to be in the UK so many days a year in order to meet that criteria, but also folks who've been working here from another country, never really policed, never really checked, never in trouble with anyone they tell they're doing it, that they are working and doing things, and then when they apply for settled status, the Home Office looking for technical reasons to say, well, there are some conditions attached to freedom of movement that you haven't quite realized, and so settled status has been rejected. I know colleagues here who are European Union citizens who have had their settled status applications rejected. I know that has happened.
Working at the university?
Working at this university. I know that has happened. I obviously cannot give any further information than that, but I can also probably guess pretty safely the situation here will not be unique. And there'll be problems for others as well.
So that's the problems that people are going to face. The government has suggested that they will allow settled status, the settled status program to go on till the end of 2020 and give people time to apply. But as far as I'm aware, that is going to require an act of parliament, and I don't see them having the time to put that together before this cut-off date.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, one reason to think it requires an act of parliament is that this stuff is in statute. The other reason to think it's the case is that Theresa May said there was 5, 6, 7 different bills that had to pass Parliament in order for Brexit to happen. One of them was about the deal. That was one of the things that had to
the withdrawal agreement. It's not a deal.
Well, no, you're absolutely right. It's definitely not the deal. But the withdrawal agreement was one of them, but it wasn't the only one. There was a bill about EU migration that was published and debated only once. It had, I think, a second reading in Parliament, but never went, I don't think it ever went to a vote, and certainly didn't go to the crucial final third vote, and I don't think has been raised in the House of Lords yet either, which would happen only after the Commons had a vote on the second reading. So not half of what Theresa May said had to happen in statute has happened. The same civil servants who are advising her government are the same civil servants advising the current one, the same people giving the warnings about a no-deal
Brexit. Project Fear.
But you know, not to get into that. I don't want to distract from our conversation. So I think you're right. I think that trying to end freedom of movement on the 31st of October is maybe the kind of stuff that Daily Mail, Daily Express readers, would like to see to energize them somehow. But it's completely unrealistic because it just simply can't happen.
But that's the point about the readers of the Daily Mail and the Daily Express.
It's difficult to do.
I think that a lot of them who don't seem to realise that freedom of movement applies to us as well.
Yeah.
British people as well.
Yeah, oh, sure.
So effectively, you're stopping about 460 million people from the EU 27 from working and retiring and contributing to Britain. Okay, that's bad, it's one country, but we are going to sever the link quite brutally between British citizens living and working in the EU 27 and their freedom of movement, which allows them to live and work in these other countries. And I think so many people have not really ever had to go anywhere that they needed a visa for. The closest they've probably had is maybe America for the ESTA,
that's right.
electronic travel
Sorry,
authorization.
Not my plan, not my policy.
No, but that's the closest they get. They have to apply online and they fill out a form, and a few hours later you get a visa. Well, you get a visa waiver. But to actually apply for visas is an absolute ball ache. I know this because I've been to every country in the world.
I know. I've read the book.
A lot of them require visas, and certainly you would not be allowed to bring a car into the country without paying for some kind of carnet, the yellow book that you need or whatever. You'd also have to. You'd also wouldn't be able to work there. You certainly wouldn't be able to retire without permission from the respective governments, and they can say no.
Yeah, no. So if France and Greece and Spain and other places where British people are working or having retirement places and so on, people are there right now because of freedom of movement.
Yeah.
If those countries were not to do the right, be generous effectively, or more generous than the UK is, and continuing the existing arrangement. If they were to reciprocate what Britain is doing to their citizens, which would be very understandable, then you will have people who are in their retirement homes, who are in their homes on retirement, people who are working, people who are studying across Europe, who will find overnight that they have lost their right to be there, potentially, if they don't have their own settled status in those places, effectively been made permanent residents, if not citizens, of those countries where they might have been for some period of time. But they haven't done that.
It's ownership of property, isn't it, as well? It's ownership of property, working rights. I mean, visits, I will be a third country. So effectively, or Britain will be a third country. What's left of Britain will be a third country. So I imagine that's going to be a system where you have to get an electronic travel authorization, like with the United States, like with Canada, like with Australia, and you have to apply online. And again, they can say no. That will give you access to the Schengen area, but I don't know if you've got a criminal record.
Oh, sure. There will be lots of pressure on politicians across Europe. This is just kind of obvious point. They may not be a majority in every country, but there'll be pressure to where they are able to expel people, they will do it. There are some countries like Hungary, amongst many others, where anti-immigration has become kind of a thing of the right-wing government in place. Italy is going to the polls, a right-wing government in place there, and lots of anti-immigration sentiment. If it was possible to kind of clamp down and remove people, they will do it, much as they do here. And by the way, the clamping down on criminal rhetoric, on the one hand, who's for allowing criminals to stay? Well, no one's going to put up their hand typically and say that sounds great, for fear of aiding and abetting murderers and worse and others to be in the country. However, the rules around having a criminal record and how they go against the immigration rules is that there are people, it's been talked about in Parliament, there have been people who have been denied permanent residency. This is not getting to European nationals. These are non-European nationals. They've been denied permanent residency, being able to stay in the UK because of parking violations. That has happened. Because parking offenses, if you park your car in the wrong spot, or if you have a speeding offense, these are offenses. Traffic offenses are, devoted viewers, part of the criminal law. And it's a sign.
Is parking though? I thought parking was just... Parking
is part of the traffic law, and traffic law in every country I'm aware of is part of the criminal code.
Just want to point out that me and my partner successfully won an appeal against Parking I this week. So
nice one.
Say that, Parking I charged us £100.
Wow.
3 minutes over. £100. Anyway,
but it's one of the kind of curiosities of law, and I don't know any country in the world that does it differently. I'd be fascinated. I'm sure there'll be feedback. I'll be fascinated to know what country in the world does not actually have traffic laws as part of the criminal law. But yeah, if you speed, if you illegal parking, go the wrong way on a one-way street, these are all criminal offenses. Who cares? The reason why this matters is that for immigration purposes in this country and in many others, someone must be someone of good character, or language to similar effect. And to be of good character...
That's me stuffed.
Well, to be of good character
from America.
is often no criminal record. And when you've got very strong pressure to be more restrictive on immigration, when you have border agents throwing everything, including the kitchen sink, on technicalities, prevent people from staying here or trying to say no to applications. Sure, everyone wants to stop the murderers and the rapists and the other terrible people, and to be fair, I'm on that side. I don't think there's many who are not. However, in being very strong on crime, it can go too far, and it's gone down as far as prevention of traffic offenses. For those who care, and I know there's millions of people out there who care very intently, the United States goes much further and in the wrong direction. So their equivalent type of language, we'll come back to freedom movement, I'm sure, in a moment, is not good character, but good moral character.
Which is interesting because you're flying into Las Vegas.
It's very interesting. And good moral character, devoted viewers, is not just about following the law in the US, but it is also about following bits of morality. For example, if someone was in an adulterous relationship, adultery can be a reason to be found not of good moral character, and you can have your ability to be a permanent resident or citizen
But you can still
rejected.
be President of the United States, as shown by the President of the United States, who cheated on his wife with a porn star who reminded him of his daughter. And that actually happened. Anyway, continue.
Who needs fiction when you have Donald Trump in the White House? And no, by the way, the president can't just buy Greenland. I just thought I'd share that.
Imagine meeting a porn star and saying, God, you remind me of my daughter.
Imagine seeing anybody.
Anyway, go on.
Anyway, all of this is wrong. So going back to freedom of movement and visas and other types of things, I think it will definitely be a lot more trick than treat, and it'll be enormously disruptive, and it'll be so disruptive as to be completely unworkable. And also, even if it was workable, which it is not, even if it was workable to identify everyone in the UK right now enjoying or think they're enjoying freedom of movement, outing them and removing them, even if you could do it, they would, the outpour of anger and so on from the British public, I think, would be such that it would make it an utter disaster. So I think this talk might sound cute for a few tough headlines, but if it ever came to fruition, it would blow up in their face. Example, Windrush. So Windrush, you had a group of folks here who, from the 1940s or so, that had been invited to work in the UK. There was, over that period of, so at the beginning, these are people who had freedom of movement.
Yes,
quite
in
literally.
The Commonwealth, which was all the Commonwealth realms, you had freedom of movement, so you could move around, work in other places. But I think that the British government in the sort of the early 70s realised that having freedom of movement around these countries where there's grinding poverty probably wasn't a good policy as far as keeping all the wingnuts on the right wing in line. Well, happy, I guess.
Yeah, well, it certainly did make the folks very happy. I mean, you had the beginning reaction in the early 1960s with Enoch Powell's Rivers of Blood speech, where interestingly, he, in his that awful tirade against immigration, especially of non-white people to the UK, one group that he identifies as non-immigrants, not part of his angry speech, were students. He speaks specifically of Commonwealth students, that by them he does not, migrants aren't them. They're not migrants in his eyes. Students don't count.
I don't mean you.
And this has been a point I've been quite enjoyed.
The other ones.
I've quite enjoyed raising to people like Diane Abbott and others, as Enoch Powell was wrong about a great many things. But even Enoch Powell, and even in the Rivers of Blood speech, didn't think students were immigrants, that students should be part of a kind of net migration statistics due out this morning.
But they are, aren't they, in this country?
But they are. But even Enoch Powell doesn't think this. And so my point to the Shadow Home Secretary and others, and to Jeremy Corbyn, was that if even Enoch Powell thinks this is wrong, and he is as far right, and he's more far right than many people are willing to tolerate, even Nigel Farage, then those who think that this is okay, well, that's an interesting political space that they are that they're occupying. I leave that point out. That'll probably be the only thing I say in this hour that will grab attention. But everyone go read the Rivers of Blood speech to be horrified by it, and note that this point about students.
Yeah. So
quoted
now,
in my book, Becoming British.
My experience, just going back to what you're saying about America, so my experience is I got 2 Esters, one in 2012 when I went to Guam and the Northern Mariana Islands. And I wish people would stop saying that Britain is going to become the 51st state. It won't. It'll become the 7th overseas territory.
Right.
Anyway, so
basically for a Puerto Rican statehood for a long time.
Hang on, is it the 7th or the 6th?
You'll know better than I.
Puerto Rico, US Virgin Islands, Guam, Northern Mariana Islands, American Samoa. Yeah, I think
Graham, you've been everywhere, mate.
I know, I've been to all. They all blend into one. Anyway, so I had to get the Ester for that. It lasts for 2 years. 2014, I applied for another Ester. I get it straight away, no problem. 2016, I applied for my 3rd Ester, and they've changed the rules, and it says, have you been to any of these countries in the last 5 years? And on the list was Syria, Sudan, Iraq, and Iran. And at the time, I had been to all of them, but 3 of them I had been to back in 2009, 2010. But on the way back from South Sudan, which was the last stop on my journey, well, supposed to be.
You have to stop somewhere.
I had to go through Sudan for it was 2 days travel through, straight through. So I filled it out and said, why were you there? So I was in transit. I was traveling up from Africa, from South Sudan. Anyway, so it got rejected.
For terrorist purposes.
Yeah, it got rejected.
Wow.
They said, no, we're not going to give you the Ester. And they're supposed to give you this thing within like 24 hours or 48 hours. So this was like a week and a half later. I was on my way to the airport in Panama City.
Oh, dear.
And I get this message up on my phone saying, you've been rejected, you can't get on the flight. So I had to redo my flights. I lose my flights with American Airlines. I mean, they're gone.
Yes.
So it cost me a lot of money. I had to go via Amsterdam instead. And then later that year, I wanted to meet sort of the publisher of my book, Man of the World, which is a place in Cleveland, Ohio, called Atbosh, who publish it. So the guy who runs the place is a lovely guy called Jared, whose brother invented Miles Morales and Jessica Jones, and he's the big main writer for Marvel, but he's just moved to DC.
There we go.
His name's Brian Michael Bendis. He's a very famous comic book writer. His brother is my publisher. Anyway, so I was going to meet Jared. I said, listen, I can't get a visa for the States, so what we'll do is if you drive up to Niagara Falls, I'll fly into Toronto, we'll meet at the falls and we'll come across the border, because you don't need an Ester if you're traveling overland from Canada or Mexico, which it says on the website. Yeah, they didn't like that. Turned up about 9 o'clock, across the border over the Rainbow Bridge. It's the middle of winter. It's all Niagara Falls. It's all
I've been over the bridge. Yeah,
like frozen.
I haven't gone down the barrel, but
and they take me aside and they interrogate me for about 3 hours.
Wow.
Take my fingerprints. They want to know the pattern on my phone, so they can look in all my phone, check all my social media. Wow. Why I was there. I said, look, I'm here for 2 days. Here's my flight out of Toronto. I'm leaving in 2 days' time. I'm meeting up with my publisher. Here's my Wikipedia page. This is why I went to those countries.
Yes.
And they just said, no, get out, and you are banned from the Ester waiver for life. So even if I want to change planes in America now...
For life?
For life, yeah. So even if I want to change planes, I need to get a full American visa. No point in getting a transit visa because it costs the same as a visit visa. And that visa is $150, £150, sorry.
Yes, sorry, yes.
It's almost parity anyway. And I have to go to London and actually be interviewed. And I was chatting with someone who's done it, and she was telling me that there were like 300 people in the embassy waiting to all be interviewed and ask questions and why they want to come to the States and why they can't just get an Ester and all this kind of stuff. So it means that now, if I'm ever going to Mexico, Central America, South America, the Caribbean, I can't change planes in America. I have to have a flight direct or fly via Europe. Now, my worry is something like that happening to people trying to get into the Schengen area from Britain, saying, an arbitrary rule that changes. So when Ester came out in 2012, that rule wasn't there. Yes.
In 2016, same application, but that rule was suddenly there. That stopped me from getting it, and then because I went, well, you don't need an ESTA to come in overland.
Yes. Yeah.
I get pulled aside, and what you're saying, there's a technicality.
Yes.
No, that's a brilliant illustration of how these technicalities lead to these very perverse outcomes.
Yes.
So you're not a terrorist. You read a wonderful book about
Wrote a wonderful book.
I'm sure there's more to come. About traveling the world, going to every country, and travel writer and traveling while you write. Your political ideals might be dangerous to the White House, but of no danger.
They weren't then. Obama was still in charge.
It was even during Obama.
This wasn't even under Trump.
Well, this shows really how perverse it's gone, and then it leads to your being banned. Now, if that can happen, and already in the UK, you're seeing people who. I think it was John Speller who had No, I told you a lie. It was Barry Gardner, I think. Had a constituent who had a double parked and had a speeding ticket, and they was therefore banned from living permanently in the UK. You have this already happening now, all in the name of keeping, people going to dangerous places and being suspect character. This can really bite Britain back quite hard.
I've also got friends in the military who have been bitten by the same thing.
I believe it.
Because they've been to Iraq.
Of course they were.
And of course,
of course they were.
There's millions of applications every month.
Yeah.
There's not a person sitting there going, accept. It's all automated. It's all just, okay, have you been to Iraq? Okay, we're going to deny you.
Yeah.
Even though they were there fighting with the Americans.
Yes.
For Operation Freedom or whatever it's called.
Yeah, whatever they call it.
And I've got another
Shocking.
horror story, which was to do with my friend from South Africa, who lived in America like 10 years earlier, and he was pulled over for speeding.
Uh-oh.
And he never paid his ticket. And he left, and he went back to South Africa, he travelled the world, whatever. And 10 years later, he went back to the States, and as he came to the airport, they went, oh, you've got an outstanding speeding fine.
Yes.
And you haven't paid it for 10 years, so we're going to have to take you into custody. And they held him until a judge became available to decide how much he had to pay for his speeding fine.
Oh my.
He was held for 8 months in Houston.
Oh my.
So, good luck, guys.
Wow. That's, yeah. But I believe it. And that's where the logic goes. And that's the kind of danger that, this kind of, what sounds exceptional about what's going on in the U.S. in one country that has made certainly a very bad turn. This is where we could find ourselves with the rest of Europe if they try to reciprocate where the cesspool that we seem to be digging ourselves further in daily under the current regime. It's very, very worrying. But I don't see it won't certainly serve the interests of anyone. It doesn't help this country have more safe borders. It doesn't help the country be more profitable. It doesn't make it have better restaurants. It doesn't help it sell nicer shoes.
Statistically, EU citizens living here, EU 27 citizens living here, contribute more to British society than they take out. They're also less likely to commit crime, and they're also more likely to have, to work hard, less likely to be unemployed than native-born British people. But that's what it's all about. It's like, where did you pop out your mum? That's the most important thing. So we talked about the effect on universities. We talked about the effect on work and on leisure, just trips, going to these places.
Not being able to.
I'm saying these places like going next door to France or the Republic of Ireland. We haven't touched on the border yet. We'll come on to that
we will.
So just before we talk about the Irish border, what about families? Is there anything to stop a family being split up on the grounds that a British guy has married a French woman, or a British woman has married a Spanish guy, or whatever it is?
Well, families are
they've got children.
Families
is there
are
any protection?
well, I think families, to be fair, are probably the biggest issue at the heart of everything. When you look back at, say, the Windrush generation, so you had people brought over to work, and I think we can go back to Windrushes to start this. issue. What really kind of kicked off is that people would then set their lives up here, and then they were working here. They were economic migrants in a way, though bringing spouses and any children at the time with them, creating families, new families, expanding them in this country. But they had folks back in Jamaica or wherever else that they came from, and then wanted to bring folks over here, reuniting with elderly parents, have them stay with us because we were able to provide, we're working, we have a home, elderly parent might not. And that idea of folks coming in who were maybe not economically productive, or this horrible idea of economic migrants having lives and having families and having connections and wanting to be in communities was there was a real reaction against that. And I think that problem, which kind of exploded more recently through the hostile environment, is one that we could very easily is going to reemerge right now. So we hear lots of stuff about economic migration. If you earn so much, that's wonderful. High-skilled folks, that's great. And it's this idea that super skilled people who could work and be anywhere, would be attracted to coming here, so long as they don't actually fall in love with anyone, don't actually want to settle down. When I write things for various newspapers, or I do other types of talks, the one thing that always really comes up with anger from people, not in me, at the government, but with anger, is about families. So I can tell you lots of stories, but I'll give you just a general situation. You have situations of, say, a British national, like your good self, might be in love with someone who is not a European citizen. Let's start with that, because we're interested in the issue of what if EU citizens are treated like the non-EU citizens. You've got lots of examples about these families being split up. One of the most ridiculous, outrageous things I heard was someone who was a British Navy serviceman who fell in love with someone, made the mistake, I guess, as far as the Home Office is concerned, someone in Southeast Asia, got married, has son, wants to come back to family in Kent, speaks with British High Commission, notorious for giving the wrong advice, saying that it was okay for them to come and that they could claim a spousal visa, so she'd be able to stay because she was a non-EU citizen, would be able to kind of stay and start their life in Kent. They arrive at Heathrow. Quite obviously, they are not able to stay because she needed to get her spousal visa elsewhere. And because she was coming with the intent of staying permanently without having a spousal visa at the border, naughty, was not allowed to enter the border. Had to get back on a plane another 15 or so hours back to where she came from. And they had this several year period. So then he then goes see someone else to get some advice. Brings her back over. If I have the story right, it was on a tourist visa, and then was advised at the border that they could apply for a spousal visa once she was in the country. So they then go to Croydon to get the visa. But of course, the law had already changed. And so, no, she had always needed it before she left to come over here. So then was deemed to be in violation of immigration rules, had accepted temporary entry to the UK, but intended to stay permanently. So then was receiving a kind of a ban. I'm aware of that happening. I'm also aware of someone again, if I have the story right, had come here, told, sorry, you need to earn so much money before you can do this.
18,500. If you marry someone who wasn't born in this country, doesn't have a UK passport, and isn't an EU citizen at the moment, that's going to change. You need to be earning 18,500 a year in a salaried job.
And it's more if you have a child. So this person has a child with this person. They go back to the country. He then finds work, I believe in Saudi Arabia or something like that, in the oil industry, earning about 19 grand or 20 grand. It was just enough to allow them in at that time. So they then fly back to, the wife and child flies to the UK while he is overseas. They have this proof of his contract and he's British, all these other things. And of course told, yeah, not quite. It's great that your British spouse is earning the right amount of money, but the money must be earned in the UK. That's a technicality some people miss. So, no good. They had to then go back, and they wound up settling
hang on.
in Belgium.
Isn't it better that they're earning money in another country and then bringing it back to the UK and paying tax on that? And wow, okay. Isn't it better to take money off other countries?
Well,
just economically.
What's even more insane is, so how did they come up with the figure? The figure is a guesstimate based on bringing nothing together. It's completely fictional, plucked out of thin air, as to what someone would need to cost to offset the impact on use of public services of the other person. What kind of, in terms of, sorry, not public services, in terms of any kind of public benefit that the person might be accessing. Ladies and gentlemen, when you are not an EU citizen and you get your happy little temporary or permanent, call it indefinite leave to remain, visa, it's got something on it that says no entitlement to public benefit. So they set a salary for the British person to earn, so the spouse doesn't get housing benefit, doesn't get other types of things
they don't
that
get
British citizens would be able to
credit.
get. Yes. To offset all this, while that person is not able to claim these things anyway, even if they are in full-time employment. So there's only a very small handful of benefits that someone who is a non-EU citizen can access, and they would only be only be benefits that you paid into. Right. So national insurance contributions, I would be paying into as non-EU. I could get something back from that, which isn't just the NHS.
When you're 75.
Isn't just the NHS. But it's, yeah. But it's insane. So I can't access public benefit, but we're going to set a salary as if I could, and it would be enough to do that based on, well, nothing. And then when the health, now I'm on a rant. And when the health migration surcharge came on the scene of £300 for workers or spouses and £150 for students per year, I said, well, then surely the salary threshold for British citizens either is moot, or should be lowered, and of course it wasn't. And then when you look at the health migration surcharge, for those who really care about this, I know I'm probably the only one now who is, what is this based on? Because the government says this is about offsetting the cost to the NHS. It's actually not about the NHS. The money doesn't actually go to the NHS. It's not earmarked for it. It goes into the Treasury to be spent on HS2, to plug gaps and other types of things. It's based on a guess of bus services for pensioners, which is not the population that is paying. It's absolutely ridiculous. It is a scandal. It's a scandal that has happened.
Yeah. So
anyway,
we stopped freedom of movement.
We stopped freedom of movement. Back to that.
Movement. We've got a whopping grey open border with Ireland, which is the EU. So,
well, hang on a second. I thought we're taking back control.
No, we're not.
And taking back control of our borders, raising more restrictions on our borders, not being open.
Everything that Vote Leave said, we're doing the absolute opposite. So where they said it will make us more free, it's making us less free. Where they said it was going to make us more competitive in the world, it's making us less competitive.
Nice.
It's destroying our economy. We're already seeing a downturn in growth of 0.2%, minus 0.2%.
And there I was thinking that Orwell was trying to tell us about a world that went wrong. I didn't think Orwell was saying how it ought to be.
Well,
anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So here's the thing. If you are an EU citizen and you fly into Dublin using your freedom of movement, you'll be able to go across the border into Northern Ireland and then get a boat from from Belfast, or a flight.
Belfast.
Over, because that's true, because we'll still have the freedom of movement area around the UK and Ireland, because that predates the EU. The point being, without any way of stopping that backdoor into the United Kingdom, if I was a criminal from another country, I might be very tempted to go and commit a crime in London because no one will know I'm there. And to stop that, the government would have to check people's passports for everything. Are you British? Yeah. Well, I need to see your passport before you can get a job, before you can rent a flat. So imagine, you leave home at the age of 18 and you go, right, I'm going to rent a flat. And they go, have you got a passport? You say, no, I don't have money, right? I've not been on holiday anywhere, never needed a passport, so I don't have one. Oh, well, you can't rent a flat then. Well, what do we do? Where do we go? Well, there's a nice street corner there for you to sleep on.
And of course, a lot of people don't have passports, and there's other kinds of issues too. It's a real mess. I used to live in the Republic of Ireland, and I had an issue when I came to the UK and applied to have a national insurance number. Oh yes, none of you people have to do that because we don't get one at birth in the post like everybody else here does. But I've been here long enough that I did get that really cool light blue and red striped card, which apparently they don't make anymore.
Oh.
Anyway, so one of the issues here, and this is I think interesting, that you need to be non-EU to have it hit you between the eyes, is I went for my interview at the Department of Work and Pensions in Sheffield, and we went through my passport about where I was coming and where I was going to verify what countries I'd been to. Had I been anywhere? Had I been to Sudan? No. Had I been to South Sudan? And so it wasn't there yet. It was there. It wasn't a political country, as you will know better than I.
Check out this page. It's way better. Look at Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Iraq.
You've got a
Congo.
far more colourful passport than I do. But I did have my own. I was well-traveled for an American, so I had lots of stamps mostly across Europe in my passport, and also when I was coming back and forth to the United States. But one of my big issues that I had was, as the guy was going through my passport, said, right, I can see when you went into Ireland, because Ireland, which does full border checks, when you fly into the airport in Dublin, where I was flying in, or to Shannon, it would have a big green stamp that would take about half a page, and the person would write what date I had to get out, I think, or what? I think, the date I arrived, they would write something about when I had to go. Fine, perfectly fine. But there was no stamps for when I came back to Britain. So you have to prove that you've only been, you have to be in the UK so many days during a year, most of the year, every year, when you are trying to renew visas, to have a lawful working permit, to have a permanent visa. You can't be outside the country for over 100-something days. But there I am, not able to prove in my passport that I was back in the UK. So why is this? Now, if you listen to UK Tory politicians, you hear things about, we do full, international checks at all the airports. Why aren't they doing checks from the Republic of Ireland? Republic of Ireland, of course, not a part of the UK.
Well, it's a
not anymore.
Common travel area that dates back to the 1920s.
Well, some people say the common travel area is the reason, but the Republic of Ireland is doing checks on Brits going into Ireland, certainly to the seaports and to airports. There is the right to ask for a passport. If you are British and everything's fine, yes, you can walk right through and have a nice day, good sir, and it's a pleasure to see you back, Mr. Hughes. But they have the right to check. You don't have the right to I'm not showing you my passport, I'm British. They do checks because I've got the stamps, and I've had, and people who are watching now who are in the UK who think I've lost the plot, fly to Dublin, fly to Shannon, go to the airport, and when you land in Dublin, in Billa Alpha Cliath, they will look for they'll ask for your passport check, and in you go, and that's very nice. But when you fly back from Dublin and you go to Newcastle or Manchester or other places, you just walk on through like you've just come back from Birmingham, from Bristol, from Edinburgh. There are no checks. It's as if it's part of the UK. Why would that be the case? It's not quite common travel area. The reason goes back to my favorite Act of Parliament.
It's the Scottish Militia Act of 1708.
The Ireland Act of 1949, where the British Parliament said in statute that the Republic of Ireland was not to be considered foreign.
Yes.
For legislative purposes.
It's true.
Now, one of the many, for those who care about, you've got a professor of law, I have to say something legal. I've done a few of these things. It's all purely entertainment.
Yeah.
So legally speaking, avid immigration wonks who are watching this right now will know that there is such a document as about the knowledge of English requirements. So for people who want to settle in the UK, people want to immigrate to the UK, beyond being a visitor, you need to show some engagement with some knowledge of English. And if you want to be here to work short term, or if you want to work long term from outside the European Union, you most definitely need to prove you have some degree of fluency in English. Now, the government says there's no exceptions. It is, the technical legal languages, it's absolute whale shit. Whale shit is bigger than bullshit. It's big. It's really big. Absolute whale shit. And it's whale shit because not only are there a number of exceptions, one of the exceptions are a list, which the document has, of nationalities. If you are any one of these nationalities, you're exempt. One of them is the United States. Belize is on the list of countries as well. Nice little tax haven. I don't know what role Lord Ashcroft might have had in having Belize on that list, but it's on the list anyway. What's fascinating is this list of countries where you're exempt. If you have a passport from these countries, they do not ask if you have any English knowledge. Millions of Americans speak no English at all.
Including the president?
Well, some might say that depending on the tweets. But the point of the story is you've got countries that are neither, America does not have an official language, which is why America produces things in multiple languages. There isn't an official language like there is in the UK. So you've got countries where English is the de facto official language, like America. You've got countries that are also where it's de jure, where it's in law. But you also have countries in the world like India where English is one of the official languages. India is not on the list. Singapore has more English speakers than some countries on the list. They're not on. Anyway, the point of the story is Republic of Ireland is not on the list.
Oh, right, okay.
But there's an asterisk. And at the bottom of the document it says Republic of Ireland is not counted as one of the exceptions because the Republic of Ireland is exempt for other reasons.
Yeah, because of the Ireland Act. As aware, an Irish citizen born in the Republic of Ireland, with an Irish passport, is not regarded as an alien under UK law.
Yes. So it's as if, as far as Westminster is concerned, that the Irish independence never really happened.
Oh, that's interesting. So that's kind of like
that would be my short version.
In certain places around the world, where sort of Belize, for instance, neighbouring Guatemala has a claim over Belize, which is an interesting story because the British sort of set up a colony there and said, right, this is Belize. Or British Honduras, as it was then.
Yes, it was, yes.
And essentially, one day, someone trekking through the jungle from Guatemala said, hang on, isn't this part of Guatemala? What are you doing here? And the British said, oh, well, we live here now. And they said, well, actually, if you look at the map, this is Guatemalan territory, can you bugger off? And the British said, listen, tell you what, we'll build you a road. We'll build you a road from the Caribbean to the Pacific, and we can stay here. And the Guatemalan government went, all right, yeah. We never built that road.
Ah, fascinating.
Yeah, but also old British Guyana, which is just simple old Guyana now, which in its own tourist literature, it's called Conradian, as in Joseph Conrad, as in Heart of Darkness.
Oh my goodness. That is...
in its own tourist material. That's where the Jonestown cult was, where the famous drinking the Kool-Aid phrase comes from, where nearly 1,000 people committed suicide or were murdered by being forced to or voluntarily drinking poison Kool-Aid at the Jonestown cult. But if you go to Venezuela, you'll see on all the maps, half of Guyana, pretty much, it says zona de reclamation, like zone to be reclaimed. And as far as they are concerned, it is part of Venezuela. And so there's no border. You can't get from Venezuela into Guyana. You have to go down into Brazil to a place called Boa Vista and then up again. I don't know if there's any direct flights between the countries, but that border, and it's a massive border,
yes,
1,000 miles, is closed. And the one that's a bit more close to home that people might have experienced who are watching this more likely is Kosovo and Serbia. So now this is interesting. You can drive, as I have done, from Serbia into Kosovo and then continue down into Macedonia, which is now called Northern Macedonia.
Yes.
It was called Fyrom for a very long time to keep the Greeks happy, but now it's called Northern Macedonia. But if you try and do that exact journey the other way, you can't get into Serbia. And the reasoning being is that as far as Serbians are concerned, and any Serbians watching this, I'm sure they'll let me know in the comments,
yes, indeed.
Kosovo is still part of Serbia. So they want to know how you got into their country without anyone stamping your passport for Serbia.
Wow.
Right? So the way they do it, well, the way you do it if you want to travel overland into Serbia from Kosovo is you have to go through Montenegro, which was a country until 2007 with Serbia. It was Serbia and Montenegro. It broke off in 2007, one of the youngest countries in the world next to South Sudan, and maybe Bougainville in a couple of weeks' time. They're having an independence referendum in Papua New Guinean territory of Bougainville. Exciting stuff. Anyway, but yeah, the idea is that under law in those countries, they still have a claim over those territories.
Well, the UK surely has given up any claim. However, it treats the Republic of Ireland as if it's still part of the country. So in the UK, again, you hear stuff like, well, the common travel area, we just don't do checks. But then you get off the plane in Dublin and they check. And you think, well, hang a second. Aren't they the other major partner? You have the Isle of Man in there, but aren't they the other major partner here? And they're checking, but Brits are not. That suggests that we just don't do checks in the common travel area is something meant to fool anyone who actually hasn't traveled in the common travel area. The other aspect of it that is also fascinating is if you are an Irish national and you want a British passport, it's not just a Northern Irish thing, you can just go to an embassy and say, here you go, pulp it. And they'll shred your Irish passport and give you a British one. Or if you want to reverse it and trade your British for an Irish, you can do that too. You can't have both. The only way you get both is you've got to do the relevant tests. And yes, I'm afraid the Irish language is now a thing for those who want to naturalize. So work on your game.
Well, it's very important that people speak English.
Moving on.
I think a politician the other week
we'll go back to the
was
border.
complaining about the fact that so many people in Britain only spoke English as a second language rather than the first language. I think that politician was Boris Johnson, who's now our Prime Minister. And I would like to point out to Mr. Johnson, if he's watching this, he pretends to be a bit of a history buff. 100 years ago, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom spoke English as his second language. 100 years ago today, David Lloyd George was the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and at the time, Ireland. And his first language was Welsh.
Well, one of the things I like to go back to is that when the UK started with the Act of Union between Scotland and England, it was never in the common law, and then when it came into statute, it was never part of the early statute that English was the only official language. When the statute came around around the First War, it was English or language with equivalency, and that was always Welsh and Scots Gaelic. So from 1707 on, being British, and before being British is when Scotland became part of, joined with England with the United Kingdom. But since that first time, it was not being Anglican was necessary to being British, because you had Methodists, you had others in Wales, you had Presbyterians in Scotland, and many other faiths as well. But it was also not just English that made things. It was Welsh and Scots as well. And the glue that kept the kingdom together, as it were, was really a legal one. It was the authority of the crown, everyone being under this shared crown. That's what made Britain. And language, and to say now, as Boris might try, that, oh no, this multiculturalism, multiple language stuff, different faiths, not everyone's going to the same church, temple, place, synagogue thing. This is not, we need to reclaim British past. Well, the British past, after the Civil War, was that people did go to different places of worship, even if they were different bits of Christianity and non-Christianity. The people spoke different languages, some very different languages. Welsh doesn't look anything to me like Irish or Scots Gaelic. And that was always bona fidely 100% British.
Yeah.
It only changed on Halloween 2013. I had a little pause there for dramatic effect. The other Halloween date. What happened on the 31st of October 2013? Trivia question. Pause now of the video if you want to.
Google.
You want to Google. I'll say it to you. I'll tell you right now. What happened was that for the first time, the British government no longer recognized someone who only spoke Welsh or only spoke Scots Gaelic as being British for naturalization purposes. So,
oh wow.
So the thing of English or language with equivalency was then changed, and this had a particular effect, for those who care. The Citizenship Test was one launched in 2005 that could be sat in 2005 until Halloween 2013 in Welsh or Scots Gaelic as well as English. It was only sat once in Scots Gaelic. We don't know if that person passed or not. Anyway, but it was stopped, and it's only in English, and it's only English fluency is now checked. But previously, if you passed the test in Welsh or Scots Gaelic, knowledge about how the UK works is a terrible test. I can say more about it in another podcast. You then met the requirement of not only knowing about life in the UK, which is a statutory requirement, but also knowing language. And that then changed Halloween 2013 to be only English. What is most fascinating to me about this isn't just that. No one noticed. Well, I noticed, and I wrote about it at the time, but that the SNP and Plaid Cymru still don't seem to know that this is the case. I would have half expected the nationalist parties, I would have hoped Welsh Labour and Scottish Labour would notice too, but I particularly expected the SNP and Plaid Cymru, for various reasons I'll get into another time, to jump on this, even if they didn't speak themselves, the languages, the right of people to do so, and the immense cultural capital, and also, I think, the enormous good pride. I think it's good to keep the languages alive and keep their official status of these native British languages. But then these native British languages, by fiat, just kind of removed as of having any importance, has been a kind of a curiosity. So when I hear people talk about multiple languages and English second language, this is really terrible. It's not in Aberystwyth.
What about BSL?
BSL?
Yeah, British Sign Language.
Of course.
Can you sit the test in that?
That is a very good question. I don't think you can. I don't think you can. I would expect, I should know this, I should expect that there will be exemptions. So there are around, certainly around health-related issues, I would expect, if I dug down far enough, if there was issues around sight, issues around, I would have, well, no, I told you a lie. If someone can read, the test is a red one online. So I imagine that probably doesn't play anything. But if someone was sight impaired, they would not be able to sit at a computer with their click of their mouse to do the test, which is how it is done, then I would expect that there would be some exemption on that.
That'd be Braille, I assume.
I would assume, but I don't know. The United States, however, is very different. They do accommodate people with different disabilities. Yeah. It's not just English, and they don't try to screw you on the test like they do here.
Britain is
but that's
tremendously
another day.
discriminatory against deaf people.
It really
I
is.
believe it.
And my partner's deaf, so learning about this in the last couple of years, it blows my mind. And the big thing that really stood out for me is the way that if you are hard of hearing, you're so badly accommodated, especially in the arts. The local theatre here in Durham, I'm going to say the Gala Theatre, has a cinema in it, never shows any subtitled films, doesn't have special tickets set aside for people who need to lip read they have a stage production on.
They should.
Which they don't even think about it. But most noxious of all, when the new Spider-Man movie came out, Spider-Man Far From Home, me and my partner wanted to go and see it at the cinema that weekend, and there wasn't a single subtitled showing of the biggest movie of the summer on the Friday or the Saturday night in the United Kingdom. Literally, not one in the United Kingdom. So that's a podcast for another day.
Well, that's not right. And I express at least a minor interest. Different situation, but my sister, one of my sisters, is the head of special education in my home state of Connecticut. And her language at university was American Sign Language, and is very keen on all this stuff, and does work with a lot of people, and goes to some great length to help people who are hard of hearing, also people hard of sight, get into work and things in the local community. So I think that's just plain damn awful. But
something interesting, I think in ASL,
that's not right.
Correct me if I'm wrong, YouTube, but the symbol for Britain is this.
All right.
For you're British, this is the symbol for British. Because the British are good at making deals and they keep to their deals, and the idea is that Britain is all about the handshake. Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
No. I'm going to go to Germany and I'm going to pin the blame on them for no deal. Okay, Boris. You got 30 days to give us a new idea. Oh, well, they should open a renegotiation. Oh, goodness, I've just been snookered on my first trip.
This is Australia. Do you know why?
No.
Shape of the hat.
Ah, nice.
Feel free to correct me in the comments.
Fascinating.
And with that, so we've covered a lot of bases today, talking about freedom of movement and how it's going to affect not just foreigners living in Britain, but Britons wanting to go and live, marry, study, retire, or even just visit these countries that have been our closest neighbours. And this is the one thing that is possibly the most frustrating thing, this whole sordid affair, is how the other countries of the EU have been portrayed in our media as the enemy. They're the bad guys, when 21 of them are our NATO allies.
And also at the same time as we're trying to win over their goodwill to get some flexibility on a deal that the government wants changed, not the way to do it.
Well, if you look at the NATO, when it was signed up, when it was created in the 1940s, I think they said if one country is attacked, then all the other countries will come in to aid them. Britain signed another treaty to that effect in 2009. Do you know what it was?
Remind us.
It was the Lisbon Treaty.
Oh, of course, that's it.
Which said that all the countries in the EU, even the ones that aren't in NATO, like Ireland, would come to Britain's assistance, or any country in the EU's assistance, should they be attacked by a foreign power. This is our club, and we're turning our back
on our own club,
on everything.
And and we're calling them the enemy.
Yeah, they're our enemy.
It makes you wonder, so is our enemy our friend now? No. Anyway.
Don't get me started. Anyway, Tom, thank you so much
as always, Graham.
Meeting me in the cafe.
We'll do it again.
It's not as noisy as it normally is. All the students are here taking resits, aren't they?
Right. I think we're in the resit period, I think, right now. Yeah.
I thought it'd be a bit quieter. But it hasn't been too bad, so that's good. So until next time, here's the EU. Brexit. It can't just be me. Brexit. It's put me off me tea. If I hear that word again, I think I might explode. I'm a European, not some trumped up toad. But while the UK still exists, and while the PM's a clown, we're putting on a carnival in old Manchester town with lights and music and ooh la la, marching bands and cabaret, with blimps and tents and elephants. I hear it's the Mancunian way. Or maybe that's never giving up.
Or is that a northern thing? Because just between you and me, I can't hear a big lady sing. So let's build something beautiful, a monument of persistence. Come one, come all, to the Cirque de Resistance.